Hey there, welcome back again to the Ivory Tower Collections. I know it's been a long time since you guys have seen a real video from me, and I have to apologize. The honest truth is I've been very busy lately doing modifications for other clients and customers on consoles, mainly audio-video modifications. It's been a real busy past couple of months for me, and I really just haven't had the time to really devote and take the videos that I would like. But I thought I would use this opportunity, which is a perfect chance since I'm actually currently modifying a client's Atari 7800, to show you something that's not exactly new or unknown, but perhaps if you've ever encountered this and you weren't aware, I wanted to talk to you about. And that is that 7800s have some compatibility issues with some 2600 games. Not all 7800s do. It varies. Basically, the very early model 7800s, usually identified through the use of socketed chips on most of the larger ICs, do not tend to have as many or any compatibility issues with 2600 games as the later made units do. This one here is a later made model. And to give you some examples of the kinds of issues that we have with certain games, I'm going to fire up some stuff now and show you. So hold on while I move the camera up to the TV. I'm going to pop in the game Space Shuttle by Activision for the Atari 2600. Now here's a very common look on what Space Shuttle might do on a non-compatible 7800. As you can see, the screen is scrolling like crazy, and I apologize if this is an epileptic thing, so I will probably need to put a warning. But basically the screen rolls as if it's a PAL cartridge, but it's not. Let me show you some other things real quick. I'm going to pop in my Uno cartridge, which is one of two primary flash cartridges available for the Atari 2600. Let's fire this up real quick. Here we go. And I'm going to go to my Supercharger games, and specifically I'm going to show you the game Frogger, because Frogger does something very odd. So let me show you what happens to Frogger on this particular non-compatible 7800. It starts to load, and we get the little beginning title screen. Now watch what happens when I start the game. Look at that. I'm playing invisible. I have no frogs. I have no sprites. No logs, no turtles, no cars. Nothing. What's going on? Pretty crazy, huh? Let me show you another Supercharger game. Let's take a look at Communist Mutants from space. Okay, title screen looks good, no problem. Now I'm going to start the game. What the heck? What's going on? Well, that's another compatibility issue that some 7800s have, is issues with Supercharger games. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you a couple of quick demos that also exhibit a compatibility issue. And I got to be careful with how I do this because I'm going to be using my old school Harmony card on this, and I had to defeat the dust cover, so bear with. Okay, let's fire up the Harmony. Here we are. And I'm going to go to my diagnostics, and I'm going to show you something interesting. Now, there are some demos that take advantage of what's called bus stuffing on the 2600, and basically it's a method of sending a whole bunch of data to it, more than it would normally be designed, so that it can produce more colors than what we might normally see. And one of the demos I like to demonstrate and take a look at is the one called the Parrot bus stuffing demo. And basically it's this one down here. And what you're supposed to see is basically a picture of like a macaw parrot. But as you can clearly see, this is not a picture of a parrot. We've got a whole bunch of weird random lines. Well, there's a simple fix for this on the 7800. Now I will warn you ahead of time, this may not work for everybody, but this works for a majority of the Atari 7800s that have passed through the Ivory Tower Collections lab here for modifications. So let me show you what we're going to take a look at. Right here in this part of the Atari 7800 is an additional circuit that has been populated on the later made 7800s specifically for timing issues to correct, as far as I know, just one Atari 2600 game. And that 2600 game that it was put in place to correct is 2600 Dark Chambers. There might be other games as well that I'm not immediately aware of, but this circuit section right here was put in place just to correct that. So this IC chip and this capacitor, I know it looks like a resistor, but this is actually a banded capacitor. Atari used a lot of these kinds of capacitors on a lot of their boards, not just the 7800, 2600, and especially the 5200 is full of these things. But in the process of adding this in, they actually broke compatibility with a large part of the older 2600 library to include the Supercharger games as well as some of the Activision titles, especially Space Shuttle. And also the bus stuffing demo that I was trying to show you a second ago with that was supposed to be a picture of a parrot, same thing. This also breaks that functionality. So what's the purpose? I mean, how do we fix this? Well, the very easiest way to fix this is to simply clip or remove that capacitor right there. This guy. He's actually marked on the board in section, it's actually silk screened on the board as C64. Now, another odd thing about this is even the old version Atari 7800s, the very first ones made in '84, they still have the silk screening in place for this capacitor and this IC chip. Yet it's actually missing on the 7800s, on those particular earlier models. So it's interesting that Atari already had this circuitry in place, or at least they had it silk screened, and didn't actually populate it at first in the 7800's life. So I'm going to go ahead and do a real hackneyed fix here. I actually just have this capacitor just kind of sitting in place. I've already desoldered it through the hole. So I'm going to go ahead and pop it loose, just like that. So you can see that I've essentially disabled it and taken this capacitor out of circuit, just like that. But everything else is intact. Now, no camera tricks here. I'm going to go ahead and bring this back to the screen, and you'll see what we have on here now. Okay. First, let me zoom back out, and let's scroll up. Well, again, you kind of have to use your imagination a little bit, but it's supposed to be essentially a picture of a macaw parrot. Now, I have the brightness a little too high on my equipment right now, but you can see that the image is actually stable. It's not bouncing around all over the place, going crazy. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in Space Shuttle again. Hopefully you can see that okay. So here we go. Turn that off. Nice steady picture of Space Shuttle, just like we would expect to see. Let's set that back up a little bit. So yeah, now Space Shuttle works again. Awesome. And remember the other games we looked at? I showed you on my Uno. I was showing you the Supercharger ROMs. Those two games. Let's take another look at those. We'll start with Frogger again. Loads up as normal, just like we expect. There's our little title screen starting intro, and look at that. Now I can see what I'm doing. I'm not playing blind anymore. Yeah. And then the other game I showed you, which was Communist Mutants from Space. You saw what it did before. It just had these little white dashed lines up along here whenever I actually started the game. So let's start the game and see what we get now. Oh look, it's my menu selection to change my options and to play the game. So yeah, there we go. And again, that little capacitor and that circuitry was all put in place so that this one game right here, 2600 dark chambers, would work properly. So what happens if I try to put dark chambers in here now with that capacitor taken out of circuit? Well, not surprisingly, nothing at all, just a black screen. With that circuit in place, dark chambers functions for a fact. We can see that. But it's unknown what other possible compatibility issues there might be with other 2600 games. But what I can tell you is that at least in the case of the bus stuffing demos and a lot of the newer homebrews, as well as some of the more classic Activision titles, that removing capacitor C64, which takes it out of circuit and effectively disables the additional timing circuitry, the point being is that one game works with that in place and lots of others do not and are broken. So in my opinion, I usually disable C64. Now I don't completely remove it from circuit. I usually just lift the leg like you saw me do earlier, or possibly I'll just take a pair of snips, flush cutters, and I'll just cut one of the legs real close at the base where it attaches to the PCB. That way it's very easy to just go ahead and just put a little dollop of solder on there to reattach it and put it back in the circuit if for some reason you decide you want to restore that functionality. Hope this helps out some people, and thanks again for watching. Thanks.